And hi, and welcome to the field report for this Sunday, May 12th, 2013. This is audio is a response to the news conference regarding what happened on Extortion 17. As you may have previewed on the Facebook page, the field report, we made sure that every video of the National Press Conference where the families of Extortion 17, and that is the Navy SEAL Team 6 that went into a battlefield where so many questions surround the loss of 30 U.S. Navy SEAL, Army National Guard, and 3 Air Force Special Forces pilots were sacrificed because of a mission that no one has the real answers to. I have to tell you my reaction, and I can remember specifically the pit in my stomach as we learned the information about our U.S. Navy SEALs shot down, including the Air National Guardsmen and the Air Force pilots. It caused me to question a lot of things, but my shock and dismay was riveting. It had really been a turning point for how our Navy SEALs conduct operations. Let's go back a couple days prior to those events. Earlier, as we had learned that there was a successful mission to the capture and killing of Osama bin Laden. We also learned those days in that time period a lot of the cheering, a lot of the excitement surrounded that one very important information was let out in the public, in the news and media. You know, there's some things that we don't say, okay, because of our security. It's been one of those unwritten rules. There's just so much information that cannot get to the public for the safety and security of, number one, our country and our military. And that's just never going into great detail. You know, we operate in vagueness today. We don't have clear answers. We don't get a lot of real good information when it comes to finding out the real important issues, to pinpoint why these missions fail and why military special ops die unnecessarily. We'll never get that information because, see, the only time we ever operate in vagueness is for that very reason, to keep them safe. So we turn these tables around. Now, naturally, we all understand accidents happen. We get that. You know what I mean? It's part of war. But we're seeing an unprecedented number of, quote, accidents occur. This concerns everyone who serves under the Obama administration because we know that there's a rules and engagement issue right off the bat. If they're asking any of us to serve our country, give us the training manual, everything that we need to train, but not be able to use that training. There's something very big, there's a huge disconnect right there in itself. I served, and I know that part of our training requires that we have to carry an M16. It is by far a vital part of your training. If you have ever trained from boot camp on. Now, most people, they may not accelerate beyond the boot camp training and AIT and some of the other trainings that are expected just to wear the uniform. Because there is a general rule that you have to have that training in order to proceed as, you know, getting orders for any other important missions. But people who go beyond the general requirements to be a soldier are your airborne rangers. These are special training. These are those accelerated, more advanced trainings. These are where You got experts who become masters at their skills. This rigorous training and requirements require so much that if you fail the program and don't graduate, you cannot be or wear the insignia or patch of these special operations. So we know what is involved in our training. And I have to tell you, there's a lot of people who agree that if you can successfully reach the goals, PT requirements, the expert training behind any kind of machinery that you operate, you earn the right to have an opinion. Because you know, as a trained, well-trained, advanced, elite soldier, that the training in itself has given you the ability to see things that the average soldier may not. But we're not saying that. We're saying that even the average soldier knows this. We all know and we all see there are some serious discrepancies in what we're trained to do and what happens on the battlefield. Now, if we were told in our training manual that you got to go by the book according to what we understand the manual, if the manual is rewritten, then we have to go by that book, okay? But part of our training, there's a big, big disconnect again. If your training book says one thing and you do a totally different other thing, there's the disconnect. Somewhere in that translation, someone is not being honest. Because you can't send people into a mission without an M16. That's part of the training. In fact, if you were to go further into just average training, basic training manuals, we are required to carry an M16 wherever we go. That's part of the training. It's part of the psychological training because it has to condition you for a wartime situation. Because you're saving not just the lives of yourselves, but you're also saving the lives of your ranger buddies. It is part of the training. So that part of the training, you take that wherever you go, whether you go on to be an airborne ranger, paratrooper, in this case it would be Navy SEALs training, elite. You move up the ladder. The training gets more and more rigorous. The standards become tougher and higher. So we know that from the day you really join the military and you step onto your boot camp in the facility, you are issued an M16. And the reason why is because you have to know at any time, if you're fired upon, you have to have the ability to defend yourself and those in your squad, your platoon, and your ranger buddies. It is required because it will save just not your life, but it will save the lives of others. And that is the ranger buddies, the buddy system. We operate on the buddy system. But that same buddy system, we can't have that same kind of relationship always with an enemy that we're not sure of. I realize that part of our Navy SEALs job is much more involved than just the actual military requirements to be called the elite soldiers. So, going back to the days that we had learned about the 30 soldiers that were shot down in a Chinook. 1960s when this Chinook was built. Now, let me tell you guys, okay, girls, the idea that a classic, I'm not saying that you can't take a car out in the 1960s, but there's no competing a 1965 Chevy Nova to some of the cars today. Those cars are great cars, don't get me wrong either. But the difference in the manufacturers, the mechanical, the electrical work originally is very diverse, very different and much more advanced now. The technology has changed many times over since 1965. So a lot of times with those older vehicles, or in this case older helicopters, they're not commissioned to fly these type of missions. So everything right there is very questionable. It's common knowledge. You would much rather want a modern, more modified type helicopter to enter any battle zone. We're not asking much. And if they're going to sit there and describe it as a budget issue, then we really need to rethink our whole position altogether. What are we doing in these areas anyway, other than trying to fly missions to defend or protect, the sovereign rights of America? I mean, what about the sovereign rights of our Navy SEALs? We're putting them in greater risk. I think that we don't have to ask these questions because we already know the answers. I think most of us realize that you just don't do it. It's the way it is. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to. It's just unwritten rule. So that day and days after, as we revealed more information and we were learning more about the families of the 30 soldiers who were shot down in that Chinook, it shook me to my core. Anything I ever believed in the military, as far as what we knew, Navy SEALs, we never knew this much information about the Navy SEALs. It was very, very elite, and I'd say secret, because that's exactly what it was. We didn't need to know what our Navy SEALs did the night they captured and killed Osama bin Laden. We don't need to know this information because the standard was always and has been for years and years prior to any wartime situations with engaging with Afghanis to Iraq and Iran. I mean, I could go back years and years, but we never heard about these operations. Even if there was the protection of the Iranian hostages in 1979, we didn't need to know because we don't talk about these kind of things publicly. We don't broadcast this kind of information because it's a high level security. There's just some things you can't talk about to the press and the media. There's some things that we used to know, the difference between what is required and expected by our politicians when they speak in behalf of families or they speak in behalf of military. There's some things that we don't need to know. The things we do need to know are not being answered. So there's a obvious, clearly, the information that we're giving is too much information, as they would say, TMI. We're getting too much information about security developments that are happening on the ground, but it's going to the public. So listen, if you have a YouTube channel and you have a TV anywhere in the world today, you can get access to that kind of information in caves of Afghanistan, where the enemy gets the same information that the American people get. That is risky. So risky that it's almost giving the enemy a head start. So if people don't have the foresight to see that, really, you should got to question what in the heck is going on. That any leader whether in our high-ranking military and our government, would want to put that information out, or allow that information to get out, or even volunteer it. I know in all the excitement, a lot of people reveal too much information, but that's why they call them briefed and they call it debrief for a reason, because when you're briefed, and you don't have to write any special notes. It's just one of those things. You discreetly don't answer questions that would further endanger an operation or even the team itself. And that's what happened the days after SEAL Team 6 went into a flight pattern into an area where the known enemy was waiting and shot down those 30 soldiers in a Chinook that shouldn't have been out of commission. As Vice President Biden was celebrating and revealed that information months prior about the original mission to capture and kill Osama bin Laden. The information was got out. Again, that information which never is revealed because we don't expect it to. Is there a mistake? There's plenty of mistakes. Of course, There's just so much information that we've been given that we shouldn't need to know. No one needs to know that information. American people don't want that information. They want that protected to keep our Navy SEALs, our elite squadrons, safe, secure, any elite forces, including our, just paratroopers, etc. 101st Airborne, 82nd Airborne, all that. This is information that should not get out to the media because there are other people on the other side of the world that watch the same programs as we do. And you know what? If American people wanted to know that information, believe me, I'd have to question what's going on there too. So we know that those are those unwritten rules. There's just so much here going on that it would take up hours and hours of time to try to find out the most important information to deliver. So while I spin my wheels and I try to ask myself important questions, some basic rules did not follow through. So there's something seriously wrong. These are basic things that we know. So it causes me to be more concerned. If we can't protect our own who go into the battlefield with just the basic substandard, the basic standard operations, and we got a serious problem because it's not just the basic standards that are concerned, it's the missions itself. We don't put our soldiers elite into these seriously, dangerous operations if we can't even meet the basic requirements before the missions, rules of engagement included. We're mostly, what you hear about the rules of engagement in some of the missions, like in this case, Extortion 17, you might as well not even send the troops in because there's no way we can survive this attack. If you're telling that we have to be shot at twice, according from what we understand from rules of engagement today, you're pretty much giving. It's just I don't even know. I have no words. That's basically like a suicide mission for our soldiers. Our soldiers knowingly put themselves at harm risk, but not on a suicide mission. Those are two very big different things. Okay, so we have to water down our strength and power. We are a very, very strong elite military. But to water down, or for us to play down our strength, just shows the strength of our military. That somehow we have to be on equal ground with our enemy. That's the whole point. The whole point is to overpower the enemy. But now, in this case, the enemy is overpowered. So, there's a lot of war games there. A lot of people know there's a basic war game problem right there. We can't water down our strength and our ability and give the enemies a couple extra minutes to run ahead of us. We have to be 10 steps ahead of our enemies. But that is not what is happening. And that is what concerns everyone who's served or is serving, who will serve. These are huge concerns. This is the difference of people signing up, serving their country proudly, and knowing that they have the security, the backing of their own in the White House, on into the administration, down to the Congress. We need to know that those people have our back. And that's concerning when you got congressmen and congresswomen ignoring emails and messages and phone calls without following up on important questions that are asked by the public. They're elected in those positions to answer these questions. That's why they're sent to represent the people. Because they are the first line of defense for the people that they elected them into office. So if you can't even get to your congressman, what's the point in even having elected officials to represent your region or your district if they can't even return a call or email? That in itself is questionable. There's a lot of questionable. I get you. There's a lot of busyness going on. But these are serious questions that are not being answered. So you see that there's just basic fundamental problems right in itself that would cause any of us to be, why? this wasn't investigated thoroughly, because there's no way anyone would even give these people a thumbs up. This is substandard investigations with generalizations, no specific, operating in vagueness, and it's all happening at a time where we're risking more lives in situations that were easily remedied with proper protocols and standards that were only required because you have to meet those protocols and standards before any missions even continues. We've heard the families talk about the specific mission, about these missions, and it just blows my mind, because anyone in their right mind would never want their brothers or sisters or family members to be put in these situations. Anyone with any basic understanding or familiar with military operations altogether know that the situations that they enter into are risky. But the risk is one thing, suicide mission is another. They are two huge things. Because no military is going to just willingly put themselves at that kind of risk if all the safety protocols are not kept in standard and up to check. It would be like me driving my car knowing there's no oil in it, but taking the risk of it. That's just silliness. That is just too risky. I risk the chance of hurting myself and those around me. It's just not worth taking that kind of risk. Now, when you talk about risk, we all risk ourselves every day. But if you have to calculate what that risk would have involved. And these are risks that we're not taking proper calculation. And what I say by we're talking about the commanders that have to follow the orders that are given from the people that they follow orders, the chain of command. Our chain of command has a huge responsibility to make the right answer, or don't make the call at all. If you think for one second or another that something is concerned or problematic, in this case, the flight pattern itself, the actual type of machinery that you use, if there's any defects, the mission has to be dropped. If there's anything that would cause any concerns, they would have to put off the mission, because until the basic requirements before the mission even completes, there's checks and standards and safety checks and all this stuff for a reason. You don't go into a mission unless all those safety checks meet the requirements, or there's no mission at all. You just can't. It'd be like flying a plane in there with a broken wing. You just don't do it. So, and we know that's very much easily explained in what we're seeing today. So, do I question our leaders? Heck yeah, I do. There's no way anyone with a common sense would ever want to send these guys and girls into that kind of mission. Just no way. Without realizing the risk. So everything that you hear is pretty valid. These are some valid concerns, but it goes beyond that. So when I was reacting to this video, I thought, I really need to speak my mind on this. I'm not really sure it's something I really address, but I tell you, this has been a change. This has changed the way I see how things are handled today. I mean, it really was my term. It was a game changer for me, and has been since. And I've waited every day to hear these families speak. I've waited every day. I've cried about it. I've prayed about it. I just never could get it out of my system, knowing that these guys saw what they saw, and they knew. Once they were put on that Chinook, and all the decisions literally on the ground were changed prior to the flight taking off, I can't imagine what went through these guys' mind. Now listen, anytime you're training or you're going on missions, it's pretty much the same flight pattern. That day, the first time, and the time that they have worked these missions, and I'm telling you, hundreds of missions, they changed all those things last minute, which is very, very rare, and in fact, never happens. I